Okay, this is paper 3, H calculator, and it's practice set 7, made in 2018 by Edexcel, so it's still very current, and it is going to really help up build your interleaving skills and recap your prior knowledge. So question 1, diagram shows the position of a lighthouse L and a harbour H. Work out the real distance between L and H. 1 centimetre represents 5 kilometres. So that's a scale. So use your ruler. Measure that distance from L to H, and you should get that as 8.5 centimetres. So you would just times 5 times 8.5. So 5 times 8.5 would be 42.5 kilometres. Part B, measure the bearing of H from L. The bearing of H, so the key is it says from L, bearings are from north. It does say measure, so you just use your protractor. Be careful with it. You can estimate roughly that it's above 90 and less than 180, so double check your answer makes sense. And that answer is 110. So we write that down there. And remember, bearings has to be in 3 digits as well. So if it was 92, you'd write 092. A boat B is 20 kilometres from H on a bearing of 040. See, that's 3 digits. On the diagram, mark the position of boat B with a cross X, label it B. So 20 kilometres, remember the scale of 1 to 5. So that means it would need to be 4 centimetres long, and at a 0 to 40 degree bearing. Let's say from H. So H is from here, bearings are from north, so get your protractor out. I'm just estimating that. Measure 40 degrees, measure how long 4 centimetres is, mark that with X, label it B, and that's your 2 marks. Right, there's a ratio question here. We've got 3 to 2, and the weight of the mixture is 150 grams. Calculate the weight of the sugar and weight of salt in the mixture. So we have 3 add 2 equals 5. So 1 part is worth 5. We do 150 divided by 5 equals 30. So 3 to 2. That's sugar and salt. Multiply that by 30. Multiply that by 30. And we have 90 and 60. We add those together, it does make 150. And that is the correct answer. 30 grams of sugar and 10 grams of salt were added to the mixture. Calculate the ratio of sugar to salt in a new mixture. So that will change everything to 120 and 70, and we can divide by 10 straight away to make it 12 and 7, and that will be it. Question 3. Find the highest common factor of A and B. Well, if you can see, A is equals to 2 times 2 times 3 times 5 times 5. B equals 2 times 2 times 2 times 5. So what factors are in common? That's 1, 5 each, and 2 sets of 2s, so the highest common factor must be 2 times 2 times 5, which is 20. Find the lowest common multiple of A and B. Well, if you remember the Venn diagram method, that might be the best way to do this. Okay, so we have a 2, a 2 and a 5. This is B, this is A. What do we have left in A? Just a 3 and a 5. What do we left have in B? A 2. And hopefully you remember the LCM is all the numbers in the Venn diagram multiplied together. So that's 3 times 5 times 2 cubed times 5. So it depends how you want to work that out. Essentially we will get 3 times 8, which is a 2 cubed, times 25. That becomes 24 times 25. And work that out whatever way suits you, non-count method, and the answer is 600. Question 4. Just draw a box plot of this information. There's 15 women. So we need to find the middle term, the median. So we do 15 add 1 divided by 2 is 8. So the 8th number, and it's all in order, is the median. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So 28 is the median, which is here. Check the scale. The smallest value is 16. The greatest value is 50. Now we just need to find the upper quartile and the lower quartile. So the lower quartile is going to be 15 add 1 divided by 4, which equals 4, the 4th term. So the 4th number is 20. That's got to be the lower quartile. The upper quartile is 3/4, so that must be, well, this is a quarter, 3/4 must be 3 times the previous answer here, 4, so that's the 12th number. That's 16th, 15th, 14th, 13th, 12th. So 38. So just to help you understanding, this represents from here to here 25% of the data. From here to here is another 25%, and here to here is 50%, and that additional knowledge could help you with certain questions when they ask you a reasoning question. That will get you all 3 marks. The box below shows a distribution of the ages of the men at the West Ribble Tennis Club, and I think this is women. Use the box plot to compare the distributions of the ages of these women and the distributions of the ages of these men. So we always compare median. So to get the marks of this, compare the median between the two in a sentence. So you can say on average the men's age is older because the men's median is greater. You can also compare the range, and you can see that the men's range of ages is less than the women's, and then compare the interquartile range, which is the upper quartile minus the lower quartile, and any two out of these 3 statements should get you 2 out of 3 marks. 2 out of 2 marks, and just to be safe you can just write all 3, and that is straightforward. Question 5. Enlarge shape S with scale factor half and centre a third. So if the scale factors are half, you know that shape should be exactly half the size of S. Mark the centre of enlargement. There's multiple different ways of doing this. I always do the ray lines because this shape should be on top of the ray lines. So if we look at this point, we know that is 2 up and 4 across. So if we half those figures, that would be 1 up. That should be across. And half of 4 is 2 across. So from the centre of enlargement, that's 1 up and 2 across, and that is one of the points, and that ray line will go through there if my line was better. So again, let's do this one. That is 2 down and 4 across. So half the scale factor, that means it's 1 down and then 2 across, and that will be here. Now this is just 3, 4, 5, 6 across, so we half 6, so from the centre that'd be 1, 2, 3. That point is here, and actually from here you can actually see the shape. If my ray lines were perfect, that will match, and that is the new shape. That will give you 2 marks. 6. So given for all values of x, where k is a constant, find the value of k. Well, we've got a quadratic here and a factor here, and the best way to do this is what we call match coefficients. So how could we do that? We could factorize the left hand side, and this 3x minus 4 is a clue here. So I'll take the 3x minus 4 out. Now we know we're going to get some kind of quadratic, so we know that's 2x squared, and that makes sense. 3x times 2x squared will give us the 6x cubed. Now how are we going to get 7x? Well, here's the clue. If we have minus 12, that will give us the minus 40. Well, minus 12 times minus 4 is 48, so that gives us this. And I will go for just working out the 56x here. See if you understand expanding brackets, this will help. So right now, when we expand the bracket, we get minus 36x, but we need minus 56x. Now you know there's a term kx here, and it's only this term here that will give us another term with just x. So how can we get another minus 20x to get from minus 36 to minus 56? That has to be 5, and a plus times a minus is a minus, so that's got to be a plus. And I've given you that clue there anyway. So k equals 5. Question 7. Work out the total area of the shaded region. Give your answer correct to the nearest whole number. A, B, C, D is a square, so we know all those side lengths are the same. 7, 7, 7. So one working out we can do is 7 times 7 equals 49. Because we've got to have to take that away from a circle. Remember, pi r squared is the area. So all we need to do now is to find r. So I would start by trying to find the diameter, which is here. Now imagine if we've got a square, that's 7 and 7. We're finding the corners of the square here. So that makes a right angle triangle. We know that we can use Pythagoras Theorem, so a squared plus b squared equals c squared. So we get 7 squared plus 7 squared equals c squared, which is 49 add 49 equals c squared, and then we get 98 equals c squared. Square root both sides, and because it says the nearest whole number, we know that's close to 100, so we can just say c equals 10. So that means the diameter equals 10 centimeters, which if we do 10 divided by 2 equals the radius, which is 5. So what we have here is then 5 squared times 3.14, because pi equals 3.14 to 2 decimal places. That should give it accurate enough to the nearest whole number. So we get 25 times 3.14. Let's work that out. So we can change that to 314 times 25. 5 times 4 is 20. 5 times 1 is 5. Add the 2, 7. 5 times 3 is 15. 2 times 4 is 8. Add the placeholder 0. 2 times 1 is 2. 2 times 3 is 6. Add that all up. Put the decimal point back. I'm going to round that to 79. So we get 49, and 79 minus 49 equals 30 centimeters squared, and that should be the correct answer. I'm assuming they will give you a range of answers for this between probably 26 and 30 as acceptable. Now, as this is a calculator paper, you could probably just do this by trial and improvement. So we know it's just 2,800 times 1.025 to represent the 2.5% to the power n is how we do compound interest, and we just need the value to be greater than 3,000. So I would suggest just try and n as 2, see what that equals, and then to the power of 3 for 3 years, and to the power of 4 until you get the lowest number of years when the number is over 3,000. So just use a calculator for that. And you can see the answer is 3, so n must equal 3. Your method mark is by trying at least 2 values for n. So you can see if you get the right answer straight away, be careful. Do earn those method marks. Now question 9. N is an integer greater than 1. That means n is 2 and above. So what I would do here is I would expand the n minus 2 squared, which is, remember, that is this. Now expand whatever your preferred method of expanding is, but I know this answer is n squared minus 4n plus 4. So it looks like n squared minus 2 minus, and I'm going to leave that in the bracket, n squared minus 4n plus 4, because the most common mistake with these types of questions is students mess up the negatives. So when you have n squared minus 2 minus, can you see you get an extra n squared here, but that's a minus n squared because of the minus sign. That's minus n squared. But can you see you've got a minus here with a minus here, because that's in the bracket, that becomes a plus. So that's plus 4n, a minus and a plus here is minus 4. We simplify that, so that cancels. So we get 4n minus 6. We can factorise that to get 2n minus 3. Now even times even equals even, and even times odd equals even, because 2 is even. So even if this is odd or this is even for any value of n, what the bracket equals, you're always going to get an even number, and that, so hence n squared minus 2 minus n minus 2 squared is always even, and that will get you your communication mark as well. The rest is the method marks, and you do need to have all of that. Question 10, make E the subject. So first step, we square both sides. Now this is a harder type changing the subject question, so we get k squared equals 5m plus 2e over 3e. Now we need to multiply both sides by 3e, so we get 3e k squared equals 5m plus 2e. Now when we've got e on both sides of an equation, we want to get all the e's on one side, so I'll just minus 2e here, and the key is we know we need to factorise at some point. Factorise e out so we can make it the subject. So now we get 3e k squared minus 2e equals 5m. Can you see we can try and just factorise e out only here? So we get e 3k squared minus 2 equals 5m, and you can see what we need to do here, just divide both sides by 3k squared minus 2. And that will leave us with e equals 5m 3k squared minus 2. And we have aced that. So we will just rearrange that formula here by minusing 1 and minusing 1. And we're just trying to show there's a solution between x equals 0 and x equals 1. So what that essentially means is, this is a cubic graph, and a cubic is kind of like that shape, and it's just saying there's a solution between 1 and 0, because that is the solution. So that's why we minus 1 on both sides to get x cubed plus 4x minus 1 equals 0. So you just sub in x equals 0 and x equals 1 into this. So subbing in 0, 0 plus 4 times 0 is 0, minus 1 equals minus 1. And subbing 1, so we get 1 cubed is 1, plus 4 times 1 is 4, minus 1 equals 4. 4. So this changes from negative to positive. So there must be a solution between x equals 0 and x equals 1. Show that this equation can be arranged to give this answer here. Well, what could we do? What can we notice that's different about these two? We're missing this 4x here, and this is sort of like making x the subject, but let's have a look. We've got a 4x and an x here, and can you see that x cubed has moved to the right hand side? So I'm going to start with just minusing x cubed from both sides to leave us with 4x equals 1 minus x cubed, because that just looks to me the easiest way to do it. And how we're going to get this x on its own? Well, we're just going to divide by 4, and that is exactly going to give us x, because 1 over 4, because when you divide by 4 and there's two terms, you have to divide each term by the 4, minus x cubed over 4. That's quite nice. And this is the iteration formula. So starting with x0 equals 0, use it twice to find the estimate for the solution of x cubed plus 4x equals 1. So if x0 equals 0, can you see that 0 represents n now? So that's when n equals 0. So that means x0 plus 1 is in fact x1 here, and we just use this formula. We know x0 is 0, so we get 1/4 minus, I'm going to write this out so you understand, and all this is substitution. So they told you x0 is 0, so we just make that 0. So the first iteration is going to be 1/4 minus 0 divided by 4, which you can't share. If you've got nothing, can you share it between 4 people? They get nothing, so that's x1 equals 1/4. So we substitute that into this formula again, which will give us, because if x, that means n is 1 here, so 1 plus 1 is 1, so that's why the second iteration is x2 equals 1 over 4 minus, and we use the x1 here, minus 1/4 cubed divided by 4, and this is a calculator test, so you can do that. If it was non-calc, I'll just say that is 1 over 4 minus 1 over 64 divided by 4, which then equals 1 over 4 minus 1 over 256. And I'll just say here, to avoid making a mistake, use your calculator, but if this is on a non-calc, then you just match the denominators and then work that out, and that would be your full 3 marks. So iteration is straightforward when you know how to do it. It is just substitution. Question 12. We have a taxi. It says given interpretation of the intercept of the graph on the y-axis. So let's face it, if this is the distance you travel in a taxi and that's the cost in dollars, so the y-intercept, and I think that's 2.4 there, that just means as soon as you get in the taxi, the minimum charge is $2.4. So we can say the minimum charge is $2.4. Let's write that properly. $2.4. give interpretation of the gradient of the graph. Now the gradient is going up by 1 each time, because obviously imagine this formula will be something like y equals mx plus 2.4. So can you see the gradient is the cost per mile, because that's x, or the kilometers in this instance, so it's the gradient is the cost per kilometer, or I should say additional cost, because you would have to add the 2.4 to that. So that's just interpreting graphs. Right, so this is functions. That's the inverse of x. So following these steps for inverse functions, these 4 steps are rewrite as y equals f of x, so that means y equals 4 over x minus 3, and then we're going to make x the subject, and this method will work for all functions. So we're going to multiply by x minus 3 on both sides, and I'm going to leave that in the bracket for now, equals 4. We need to make x a subject, so let's expand this bracket, which equals 4. That's 3y, and so we need to plus 3y because we want x the subject, and I can write this as xy instead. Xy and yx are the same thing. Now divide by y, divide by y, so now we get x equals 4 plus 3y over y. Now swap x and y, so that becomes y equals 4 plus 3x over x. So that is the inverse function. 4 plus 3x over x. I mean, you could double check that if I let x equals 4 here, so f4 equals 4 divided by 4 minus 3 equals 1. I mean equals 4, that's 4 divided by 1. Let's do that properly, and then let's try for this f of x minus 1, so the inverse. So let's try the number 4 here. So you would get 4 plus 3 times 4 divided by 4 equals 16 over 4, which equals 4. So you can see that is the inverse function because we get the same answer. You don't need to show this, this is just an easy way to double check that you've got this correct. And let's move on. Solve f of GA equals 1. You must show you're working. Now let's rewrite what this all is. F of x equals 4 over x minus 3. G of x equals x minus 2 over x. So now we're just substituting this value, g of a, and we can leave that as an x or just use the letter a into f. So that means we get f g of a equals, so this value here gets swapped for this x. So we get 4 over, we're going to use the letter A instead, A minus 2 over A minus 3. Now that looks quite ugly. But not to worry, because that's why they gave us this nice equals 1 to make it not so ugly. So when we have a divided by a not very nice term like this, we just multiply both sides by this whole thing. So what we need to do is cancel out the minus 3, so we plus 3 on both sides, which leaves us with 7 equals A minus 2 over A. And now this doesn't look so bad because we multiply both sides by A. And I'm going to move this along here. Maybe in an exam, do this if you're working out it's all over the place so the examiner can follow your working. So now we get 7A equals A minus 2, so minus A on both sides, we get 6A equals minus 2, so we divide by 6, you get A equals minus 2 over 6, and A equals minus a third, and that is complete. Right, we have some dimensions. It's a bar made of metal, shape of a cuboid. We have a mass m, and we have a d. M is the mass, h is the height, and d, I'm just going to call it depth. It's correct to 1 decimal place, 2 decimal places, and whole number. And it talks about a degree, appropriate degree of accuracy, and it does say you have to explain your answer, so we need to do that to gain our communication mark. So we know this is a density, mass, volume question. I remember this by thinking David married Victoria Beckham. Now, 1 decimal place, let's do the bounds for this to get 1 mark. 1 decimal place is 0.1, so if we divide that by 2, that means we're going to do 0.05 plus or minus this to get the upper bound and lower bound. So for D, upper bound is going to be 8.35 and the lower bound is going to be 8.25. This is 2 decimal places, so upper bound of M is going to be 13.915 and 13.905 is a lower. Now 1 to the nearest whole number, so 1 divided by 2 equals 0.5. We plus or minus to get the upper and lower bound. So upper bound here is 84.5 and lower bound is 83.5. Now we're looking for density, so D equals M divided by V. So to get the D upper bound, we must have M upper bound divided by the volume lower bound, and to get the D lower bound we've got to have the mass lower bound divided by the volume upper bound to get the smallest possible value for D. Now what's missing here is just the volume. So the volume of this prism is D squared H. So let's find upper bound first. So that means we need for D upper bound we're going to need, and that's density. I'm going to use little d, and I'm going to write the volume upper bound here is going to be equal d, the length of D upper bound squared times the height upper bound, and that will give us the volume upper bound, and the volume lower bound is obviously going to be the length D squared, but the lower bounds of it times H, the height upper bound. So we're going to need that to substitute that in later. So the density upper bound is going to be the mass upper bound, which we found out is 13.915 times the density upper bound, D upper bound, which is 8.35 squared times 84.5. So be careful here because we have two of the same letters. And then the density lower bound, I'm going to say density here so I don't get confused with the little d for the depth, will be mass lower bound 13.905 divided by 8.25 squared times 83.5, because remember we need the volume lower bound here. Now we work those out on the calculator. Now when we type this in and substitute the answers in, we get this answer for density, and that looks a little bit odd, but you've got to remember that we know that m is in kilograms and it's asking for grams per centimeters cubed. So we know 1 kg equals 1,000 grams. So if I times this answer by 1,000, I will get 2.36. And to save some working out this substitution here, if I times this mass by 1,000 at the start to turn it into grams, you will get this answer on your calculator. Try it and you can see that if we compare these numbers to the first decimal place, they both round to 2.4. So the answer is 2.4 because both answers round to 2.4 to one decimal place. And that's how you can do that. But you can see how important it is to have the method, because it's quite easy to forget to change your answer to grams into the kilos. So this question could throw some people off, but you should still be able to get most of the marks, and this is out of 5, so it's very important marks. Okay, so this is a ratio problem with some problem solving. Abby, Betty and Carol. Ratio of 1 to 3 to x, where x is greater than 3, and Carol shares 18 more than the apples in Betty's share. So as we know we have to share 60 exactly, I want to find the factors of 60. This is how I do it. There's probably more than one way to do this. And so we're going to use 6 and 10, 3 and 20, 4 and 15, and I'm pretty sure, I'm going to discount 2 and 30 because I know that ratio is going to be too big to get a difference of 18, but we'll see anyway. So if we've got 1 to 3 to x, this is how many parts there are. That's why I wanted to find these factors. Now, we know there can't be 6 parts because that means x will be 2 here. So if there are 10 parts, the ratio could be possibly 1 to 3 to 6, because 1 add 3 plus 6 equals 10. Or it could be, let's try 15, it could be 1 to 3 to 11, and that's 1 plus 3 plus 11 equals 15. Now I can discount that very quickly if you know what you're doing, because the difference between 3 and 11, and that's Carol and Betty, is 8. So if you were to multiply these ratios, double it, that would be 2 to 6 to 22. You're never going to get a difference. That difference is 16, and that's not going to be 18. But luckily I can see this 1 to 3 to 6 here, the difference between here and here is plus 3. And that 10 will go into 60 easily. So if I times this by 6, times this by 6, times this by 6, and obviously if you've got, 3 times 6 is going to give you the difference of 18 from here. You've got 6, 18 and 36. Check. This is worth a method mark, guys, so please do this, you're checking. And that does make 60. Can you see their difference is 18? The difference. So the ratio must be 1 to 3 to 6. And the final value of x, so x, because that's C, B, A, so x equals 6, and that wasn't too bad. We have two cones that are similar, so that means they are in the same proportion. The base of cone A is diameter 80, the base of cone B is 160. So, first step, this normally gives you a method mark. Length scale factor equals 2, because 160 divided by 80 equals 2. So please have your working out together so it's easy to follow. Length scale factor is 2. Alan uses 80 millilitres of paint to paint the cone. So if you're painting the cone, this has got to do with surface area. So remember, if the length scale factor equals 2, the area scale factor is going to be the length squared. So the area equals 2 squared equals 4. That's the area scale factor. Alan uses 80 millimeters of paint to paint cone A. How much is she going to need for cone B? So then you just need to use the area scale factor, because it's got to do area. So you do just 80 times 4 equals 320 milliliters. Now the volume of cone A is 171. So A is a smaller one. Work out the volume of cone B. Well, you've got the length scale factor equals 2. The volume is the length scale factor cubed, so that equals 2 cubed, which equals 8. And you've got a calculator, so you would just do 171,700 times 8, and that will be your answer. And just write in what's on your calculator, and that will get you your 5 marks, and that is straightforward. Now DC equals 2AB. This is a vectors question. AD equals 2B, and the arrow suggests that way is 2B. It says AB equals 4A, so you've got the arrow here, that's 4A. We know DC equals 2AB, so that must be 8A. Find BM in terms of A and B. B to M. Now vectors is just a bit of visualization, but how can we get to B to C, because we don't know what M is, and so the clue is how to get to B to C, because BM is halfway between BC. So if we find B to C, we can just half that to get B to M. So going this way, that's minus 4A plus 2B plus 8A. So B to C equals minus 4a plus 2b plus 8a. Let's simplify that. So that equals 4a plus 2b. M is the midpoint, so we halve that. That's your answer. Now, n is the point such as DCN is a straight line and DC to CN equals the ratio 2 to 1. Show that AMN is a straight line. Now, this information I give you is key because I wouldn't give you it otherwise. So, I've written this information up here so we can all see the question together. DCN is a straight line, we can see that. DC to DN is 2 to 1. So if DC is 8a, then to DN must be, now I've written that wrong, no wonder that didn't make sense, it's CN, so be careful here. So that must mean C to N must be 4a. Now to show it's a straight line, it must have the same gradient or factor, but I'll go into that into more detail in a minute. So guys, we remember that B to M was in fact 2a plus b. So you could see that A to M you would add BM to AB, so that would be 4a add 2a plus b, that equals 6a plus b. Now you could say, now because BM is 2a plus b and that's a midpoint, M to C must be 2a plus b as well. Now can you see that means if we work out M to N now, that must be 2a plus b plus 4a. So that equals 6a plus b. So if it's travelling along the same direction, that must be a straight line. And obviously if you wanted to work out what A to N is, that will be both of those combined. So it's going to be 12a plus b, and you could also see Mn is a factor of this, not plus b, plus 2b, because if you add them both, and Mn is a factor, so it must be a straight line. So hopefully that shows you that AN for your final answer mark, because all of this would have got you your method marks. There's more than one way to do this, as long as you've proved that. You can see that AN, and I should draw the arrows to show it's a position vector. So AN equals 2Mn, and that proves that it's a straight line. I hope that makes sense. Once you get good at understanding vectors, it's not as difficult as you realise. And you do have to add, they go through a common point, so it must be a straight line. Now that's important because you could have a vector like this and then another one like this, and that's not combine one straight line, but if they share a point, then you must go through each other to make a straight line. Now a key here is these are similar shapes, they're quadrilaterals. Now you need to spot that this shape has been rotated round if you were to rotate it. So this 5 here will correspond to QR, and this A to D, which is 11, correlates to this PS, and that's the most common mistake students make, but you should be able to tell by the shape. So we need to find a scale factor in common, and we need to find RQ. We don't have a matching side here, but we have a matching side here. So we need to find the scale factor. So I would do the scale factor as 27.5 divided by 11. Use your calculator, and that equals 2.5. So remember, going from 11, so going from, this is AD 11 to, how did they say it in the question, PS is 27.5, and that scale factor is times by 2.5. So if we want to find RQ, we're going from smaller to bigger, so that's nice. We just do 5 times the scale factor 2.5, and the answer is 12.5 centimeters. Now part B says to work out the length of CD. So we know CD matches up with RS, and we're going from bigger to smaller now, so we need to do 40.2.5 divided by the scale factor. Use your calculator, work that out, and that equals 17 centimeters. So that's the answer to this, to B. So that's quite not too bad. You just got to realise the shape is flipped and rotated. Question 19, a question like this was similar to your mock. The hemisphere has a volume of k pi centimeters cubed. Find the value of pi. It's given you the total surface area of this. Now the surface area of a sphere, so we're going to use that, is 4 pi r squared. That's the total. Now, so a hemisphere, that's half of it. So the hemisphere, we're going to need to divide that by 2. Which leaves us with 2 pi r squared. But that surface area is only going to give us this. Now can you see we've still got this face here that we need to work out. Now we don't know that radius, and what's the area of a circle? Pi r squared. So the total hemisphere is going to be, surface area is going to be 2 pi r squared plus pi r squared. Now you know how to add like terms. That means the surface area of the hemisphere is 3 pi r squared. That is what we're going to use in a bit. So they've given us the surface area of 16 over 3 pi, so we can use that to create a formula. 16 over 3 pi equals 3 pi r squared because we need to find out r, I believe, because that's a missing variable. So you can see here we can divide out by pi to cancel out pi on both sides. We now need to also divide by 3, so we're going to get 16 over 9 equals r squared. We're going to square root both sides to get r. So r is going to be 4 over 3. That's nice. And the volume, now it's told us volume equals 4 over 3 pi r cubed. So we know it's 4 over 3 pi r cubed equals the volume of a sphere. That's the V of sphere. But can you see they said this is a hemisphere, so that means we need to divide that by 2 to get volume of the hemisphere. And if you miss that out, you're going to lose some answer marks. So that becomes 4 over 6 pi r cubed, and we know that equals k pi. Now we know r is 4 over 3, so let's substitute that in. And now you can see why we need to find r equals k pi. Now those pi's will cancel because you can divide both sides by pi because this is all multiply. So I'm just going to put the divide by pi there. That's how we got rid of the pi, and put this into your calculator. And the calculator should simplify the answers for you to 128 over 81, and that's not too bad, just a bit of problem solving and applying your equation skills. Now on to the last question in this paper, question 20. Now this is apparently the most difficult out of the 3 papers. I'll show you the grain boundaries after this question. Now we have a triangle. Angle ACB is 40, AC equals 8.4, and we have the area of the triangle. So we should realise we need to use half AB sine C somewhere, and that's going to equal 100, and that will get you a method mark. So let's substitute those values in. So that is big C, this is little c, this is little a, and that's b, and that looks perfect because we can sub in literally all the values here and get the value of little a. So let's just use 0.5 times a times 8.4 times sine 40 equals 100. So to get a, we just divide out by 0.5 times 8.4 times sine 40. So a will equal 100 divided by 0.5 times 8.4 times sine 40. Use your calculator to work that out. So on the calculator that equals 37.041 rounded. Now the question is asking us to find the length of AB. The length of AB here is actually little c. So can you remember what formula we can use? And that would be the cosine rule. And unfortunately you do need to remember these off by heart. And that cosine rule is c squared equals a squared plus b squared minus 2ab cos c, but in this case it is cos 40, and that is cos big C, so that's the angle. So we've got literally all the figures we need, and let's just substitute those values in. And I would put this down on your piece of paper because I'm pretty confident that's going to be worth a method mark. So you've got 37.041 squared, and believe it or not, students make a lot of calculator mistakes, plus little b squared, which remember is the 8.4, So that's plus 8.4 squared minus 2 times, and I'm just going to put this in a bracket here, 2 times A, which is 37.041, times B, 8.4, times cos 40. We work out what that equals on the calculator. Now that equals 965.898 to 3 decimal places, and that is your C squared. Now it does say give your answer correct to 3 significant figures, and we need to find C, so we square root both sides. And you can just click square root answer on your calculator, that will be fine. These brackets aren't absolutely necessary, but I like to do it to break up each stage of the working, so I know what I'm doing correctly on a calculator and I'm less likely to make a mistake. So I'm going to square root the answer on my calculator, and I will get C to equal 31.0789 to 3 decimal places. Now we're doing it to 3 significant figures, so don't lose a mark here. That's the third significant figure, 1, 2, 3, so that means round to that nearest decimal place there. Look at the next number, it is 5 or more, so that answer is 31.1 centimetres, and that should be your full marks, and that is the end of the paper. Now here you go, the suggested grade boundaries for all 3 papers for set 7. So as you can see, paper 3H is considered the most difficult because a grade 7 on this would be 42 marks. Grade 9 on this is 58 marks, grade 8 is 50, grade 6 is 34, and I hope you can see you could easily get a grade 7 on this paper, even a grade 8, and if you've got a grade 9, well done. And these are all key skills for you to get a top score come June. I hope that helps. Well done, guys.